Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe and support me. The world as we knew it ended quietly, without a single shot being fired. The Altran arrived in their silver ships, descending from the sky like a cold god sent to wipe out everything human. They were sleek, efficient, and emotionless creatures of pure logic. No grand speeches, no demands. They didn't have time for such things. To them, we were primitive, weak, bound by irrational traditions and emotions that had no place in their world. And so, they set about erasing us, not just physically, but spiritually. Father Michael watched as the last piece of stained glass in his church was shattered. It was all gone now at the crucifix, the altar, even the worn pews where people once sat and prayed for a better life. The Altran didn't understand the meaning behind these objects, but they knew they had to destroy them. They had already burned the books, flattened the temples, and obliterated anything that carried the weight of human belief. Faith, in their eyes, was weakness. It was illogical to cling to what couldn't be proven. Michael stood in the rubble, his once white collar gray with dust, his fingers trembling as they traced the shape of the crucifix in the air. What good had it done? What good had any of this done? He had prayed for salvation when the invasion started, for a miracle. But there had been nothing. The alien ships came, their black shadows blotting out the sun, and one by one, the cities fell. Humanity fell. Why are you still here, Father? A voice behind him asked. It was Mark, one of the few survivors from the town. He had been a regular at Sunday Mass, before all of this. I don't know, Michael said, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't know anymore. Mark stepped closer, looking at the ruins. It's all gone. We're all gone. What's left? Michael didn't answer. He didn't have an answer. The truth was, he didn't know what was left either. His faith had always been strong, but now, standing in the ashes of everything he had held dear, it felt fragile. What was faith in the face of cold, unyielding logic? The Altran had no gods, no beliefs. They were perfect in their lack of emotion, their ability to see the universe for what it was: empty, meaningless, to be conquered. They're saying the resistance is over, Mark said, glancing nervously at the sky. There's no fight left in us. Michael turned away from the ruins, his chest heavy. The resistance had never stood a chance. The Altran predicted every move, crushed every rebellion before it had a chance to take root. To fight them was to fight against the inevitable. And yet, deep inside him, a small flicker of something remained. He didn't know if it was faith or foolishness, but it was there. It refused to die. I'll pray, Michael said suddenly, his voice firmer now. Mark blinked, as if he hadn't heard right. Pray, Father? Look around. What good is praying now? We need weapons, strategy, something concrete. Noted he gestured at the sky, not prayers. Michael smiled faintly, the sadness still lingering at the edges. I've been praying for a miracle, Mark. But maybe we don't need a miracle. Maybe we just need to remember what we are. Maybe broken bar, maybe that's enough. Mark stared at him, his face a mixture of disbelief and frustration. They've taken everything from us. What's left? Michael didn't answer immediately. Instead, he knelt in the rubble, his knees sinking into the dust, and bowed his head. It wasn't the grand cathedral he was used to. There were no hymns, no candles, just the gray sky and the broken bones of his faith. But he prayed anyway. And for the first time in a long time, he felt something stir within him, something quiet but powerful, as if the earth itself was listening. The resistance was not made of soldiers anymore. The real fighters were gone, lost in the first wave of the invasion. What remained were the people, ordinary men and women with no weapons, no training, and no hope. They had nothing to fight with, but Father Michael knew that wasn't entirely true. There was something left, something the Altran couldn't understand. They had stripped away everything that made humanity weak, at least, that's what they thought. Religion, art, culture, all of it erased. But in doing so, they had unknowingly opened the door to something far more dangerous, Belief. It started small. In a basement somewhere in the city, Michael gathered the few who would listen. They were broken, beaten down by years of oppression, but they were still alive. And as long as they were alive, they had something to believe in. We've lost our homes, our cities, everything that made us who we are, Michael began, his voice steady despite the weight of the words. But we haven't lost ourselves. The Altran can't take that from us. One of the men, Joshua, a former engineer, shook his head. We can't fight them, Father. They're too strong, to a broken bar perfect. They're not perfect, Michael said, his eyes burning with a quiet intensity. They're flawed in ways they don't even realize. They don't understand faith. They don't understand belief, and that's where we have the advantage. Joshua looked unconvinced. Faith won't stop their drones from killing us. Belief won't bring back the dead. No, Michael admitted. But it can unite us. It can make us stronger than they ever expected. The people in the room exchanged uncertain glances. It was hard to believe in anything after what they had seen. But Michael had seen something too. That flicker of power, that small stirring inside him. It wasn't just faith. It was something more. Something he couldn't fully explain yet, but he knew it was real. And if he could feel it, then maybe others could too. Word spread slowly, quietly. The Altran didn't notice at first. They were too focused on erasing the physical remnants of human culture to realize that a far more dangerous idea was taking root. Faith, belief, hope. These were concepts they didn't understand, couldn't quantify. They saw the world in numbers, in logic, and anything outside that framework was irrelevant. But as the resistance grew, it became clear that something was happening. People began to gather in secret, not to plan attacks or build weapons, but to pray, to sing, to remember who they were. And with each gathering, Michael felt the power growing. It wasn't just faith anymore. It was something deeper, something primal. It wasn't long before the Altran took notice. They didn't attack immediately. That wasn't their way. Instead, they observed, calculated, tried to understand what this new resistance was. They sent spies, drones, infiltrators, but no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't make sense of it. This wasn't a rebellion they could predict or control. Michael stood in the center of it all, watching as the people came together, their faces lit not by fire or rage, but by something far more powerful, belief. He didn't fully understand it himself, but he knew it was real. He could feel it in the air, like electricity crackling just beneath the surface. And then, one night, it happened. It was during one of their secret gatherings, deep in the woods outside the city. The air was thick with tension, but also with hope. They were praying, chanting softly, when the ground began to tremble. At first, they thought it was an earthquake, or perhaps an attack. But it wasn't either of those things. It was something far stranger. The air around them seemed to shimmer, and Michael felt a warmth spreading through him, a warmth that didn't come from the fire in the center of the circle. It was coming from within. Before he could speak, a bright light exploded from the ground, enveloping them all. And in that moment, Michael understood. This was the power he had felt, the power he had been trying to awaken. It was more than faith. It was human potential, something the Altran could never touch. At the edges of the gathering, Altran drones whirred to life, their cameras capturing the scene. But what they recorded was impossible. The humans were glowing, not with any technology the Altran could detect, but with something else, something beyond their understanding. The Altran commander, Zarak, reviewed the footage with a frown. "This is illogical," he muttered, his metallic voice echoing through the chamber. "Humans do not possess this capability. We must destroy them." His second in command, Rax, said coldly. "This phenomenon is a threat to the mission." Zarak hesitated. "We will study it first. There must be a rational explanation." But even as he said the words, a flicker of doubt crossed his mind. For the first time in his life, Zarak felt something strange, something alien, uncertainty. Father Michael had always believed in miracles. He had always trusted in the unseen forces that guided the universe. But never in his wildest dreams had he imagined witnessing one like this. As the glow spread from person to person, the air hummed with a strange energy, like the heartbeat of the earth itself had come alive. It wasn't just faith anymore. It was something far greater, a force born from the collective spirit of humanity, something the Altran would never understand. The people around him stared at their hands in awe, watching as the light pulsed from their bodies. It wasn't a blinding brightness, but a soft, golden glow, like the embers of a long-forgotten fire that had finally been reignited. They felt it deep in their bones, in their hearts, a power they had always carried within them but had never known how to access. Michael's mind raced. How was this happening? Was it the prayers, the faith? Or was it something more fundamental, something woven into the very fabric of humanity? He didn't know. All he knew was that they were no longer helpless. They had been given a weapon far more powerful than any gun or bomb, their belief in themselves. The Altran drones hovered at the edges of the gathering, their cold, mechanical eyes recording everything. They couldn't comprehend what they were seeing. The data they gathered made no sense. These humans, who should have been weak and defeated, were standing tall, glowing with an energy the Altran could not quantify. It was illogical, impossible. For the first time since the invasion, Michael felt hope. Real hope. Not the fleeting, fragile kind that had sustained them in the early days of the resistance, but a deep, unwavering certainty that they could win this. They could beat the Altran, not with force, but with something the invaders couldn't destroy, the human spirit. But he knew this moment wouldn't last forever. The Altran would respond. They would try to crush this new resistance before it could spread. He had to act quickly. We need to move, Michael said, his voice steady, but urgent. We've awakened something in ourselves, but the Altran won't stand by and let us grow stronger. Joshua, the engineer, stepped forward, his eyes wide with disbelief. What is this, Father? What are we? We're human, Michael replied, placing a hand on Joshua's shoulder. And that means more than we ever understood. The others gathered around, nodding, their faces filled with a mix of awe and determination. This was their chance. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for what it meant to be human, for their faith, their culture, their very existence. We'll take this power and spread it, Michael continued. We'll gather more people, awaken more of this energy. The Altran won't be able to stop us. Mark, the young man who had doubted him in the beginning, now stood by his side, the glow reflecting in his eyes. What do we do next? We pray, Michael said simply. And we fight, in every way we can. The Altran didn't wait long to make their move. Within days, they launched an attack on the human strongholds, sending their most advanced machines to destroy the pockets of resistance. But something had changed. The humans they faced were no longer frightened and scattered. They were united, bound by an invisible force that made them stronger than the Altran's logic could account for. The battle for Earth began in earnest, but it was not the kind of battle the Altran had anticipated. They had prepared for physical combat, for brute force. They hadn't prepared for the resilience of human belief. The more they tried to crush the resistance, the stronger it grew. In city after city, humans gathered in secret, praying, chanting, remembering who they were. And with each gathering, the glow spread. It wasn't a visible thing anymore. It was a feeling, a connection between people that transcended words. They didn't need to understand it fully. They only needed to trust it. And as they did, the Altran began to falter. Zarak, the Altran commander, watched from his control room, his metallic face expressionless, but inside, he was seething. The humans were defying all logic. Their resistance should have been crushed by now. And yet, they persisted. More than that, they were winning. He replayed the footage from the drones again and again, trying to find the flaw, the weakness. There had to be something they were missing. But no matter how many times he analyzed the data, the result was the same. The humans had unlocked a power the Altran couldn't understand. We must act now, Rax said, standing beside him. They are growing stronger by the day. If we do not destroy them soon, they will become unstoppable. Zerak's eyes narrowed. We will destroy them, but not with brute force. That has proven ineffective. Then how? We must attack the source of their strength, their belief. Father Michael stood at the front of the resistance, leading his people not with weapons, but with words. He knew the Altran would strike back, and when they did, it would be unlike anything they had faced before. But he was ready. They all were. The night was dark, the sky heavy with the promise of another attack. But there was no fear in the camp. The people stood together, their faith in each other stronger than ever. And then, without warning, the Altran ships appeared in the sky, silent and ominous. The resistance braced themselves, but this time, there was no bombardment, no lasers, no explosions. Instead, a voice boomed from the ships, cold and mechanical. Humans, your resistance is futile. We offer you one final chance to surrender. Abandon your beliefs, and you will be spared. A murmur rippled through the crowd, but Michael stepped forward, his back straight, his voice calm. We will never surrender, he said, his words carried by the wind. Not to you, not to anyone. The voice from the ship continued. Your faith is your weakness. It blinds you to the truth. Abandon it, and you will live. Cling to it, and you will die. Michael smiled faintly. Faith isn't our weakness. It's our strength. And it's something you will never understand. There was a pause, and then the voice returned, colder than before. Then you will die. The ships began to descend, and the people prepared for the worst. But Michael stood firm, his hands raised, his eyes closed in silent prayer. And then it happened. The glow that had flickered within them before returned, but this time, it was stronger, brighter. It spread like wildfire, engulfing the camp in a soft, golden light. The Altran ships halted in midair, their systems short-circuiting as they tried to process what was happening. Zerak watched in horror from his control room as the humans below became something more, something the Altran couldn't control. Their faith had become a force of nature, a power that defied all logic. Impossible, Zerak whispered, his cold exterior cracking for the first time. This is impossible. But it wasn't. It was real, and it was unstoppable. The ships began to fall, one by one, crashing into the earth as their systems overloaded. The Altran forces, perfect in their logic, could not comprehend the chaotic, beautiful energy that surged from the humans below. Michael opened his eyes, watching as the Altran machines crumbled before them. It wasn't violence that had defeated them. It wasn't war. It was faith. It was belief. The people cheered, their voices rising into the night. But Michael remained still, his heart heavy with the knowledge of what had just happened. They had won, yes, but the victory had come at a cost. The Altran had been defeated not by brute force, but by something much deeper, much more human. As the last of the ships fell, the people gathered around Michael, their faces filled with awe and gratitude. He smiled at them, knowing that they had done something remarkable. They had shown the universe that faith in each other, faith in something greater was a power beyond anything the Altran could ever understand. We've done it, Mark said, stepping forward, his voice filled with emotion. We've beaten them. Michael nodded, his eyes shining with unshed tears. Yes, he said softly. But remember, this is just the beginning. The Altran may be gone, but we must never forget what we've learned here. Our faith, our belief, it's what makes us who we are, and it's something no one can ever take from us. As the sun began to rise on the horizon, the people stood together, united not by fear, but by hope. They had fought for their humanity, and they had won. And in the quiet that followed, Father Michael knew that the world had changed forever. Not because of the Altran, but because of what they had awakened within themselves. The battle was over, but their journey was just beginning.